A Pope Francis Lexicon is a collection of 54 essays by cardinals, bishops, theologians, writers, journalists about words that Pope Francis often uses. The book will come out in February and is being published in the United States by Liturgical Press.
Well, Cindy and I started the process by thinking about what were the things that Pope Francis said that we were most interested in and we wanted to know more about. So, for example, the Pope has spoken a lot about the idea of encounter. And so we went to Archbishop Fernandez in Argentina, the head of the Pontifical University of Argentina, to explain to us what the Pope means when he uses the word encounter, what's behind it. And Archbishop Fernandez used this wonderful image of the polyhedron and what that means in terms of having a unity in diversity, that not everything is the same, but that people can encounter one another. And we also thought, for example, about the idea of the field hospital, something the Pope has spoken about often, that the church should be out in the street working with people. And for that idea, we went to Cardinal Blaise Cupich in Chicago, who explained that the field hospital is the place where mercy is put in action. It's a beautiful reflection. And so we kind of went one by one deciding who could explain these ideas to us and who could do it in a very interesting way and kind of get behind the scenes of the Pope's thoughts and what the themes that he might be getting at more broadly.
One of the longest essays in the book is written by Archbishop Donald Boland, and it's on mercy, which obviously is a key concept in the teaching of Pope Francis. But for Archbishop Boland, it's also a very important topic. He chose mercy within mercy within mercy as his episcopal motto 8 or 9 years ago. So his reflections on the Pope's reflections on mercy is a key chapter in the book. There are also essays that look at what Pope Francis has said on a number of issues and sort of challenge the Pope. For example, on women, the essay leaves some room for criticism and challenging the Pope to do more to bring women's voices into the church in the way that he has said he wants them to be present. Basically, we had a conference call with our editor and just started throwing out words and phrases that the Pope uses all of the time, like mercy, like field hospital, like encounter, dialogue. And then we started thinking of people we knew, people who we've read, people we've admired, people we wanted to get to know better, that might be interested in reflecting about what the Pope means and adding something to it. Like we thought for discernment, you have to find a Jesuit who will write about it because the Pope speaks about discernment from the perspective of a Jesuit. And so that's one thing we did. Conscience is another area where I think people are a bit fuzzy on what the Pope actually means, what Catholic tradition means by conscience. And so that was something important. For grandparents, we obviously went to a grandfather, to somebody who knew what it meant to be a grandparent.
Part of it, too, was thinking through who might be the most authoritative voice on an issue that we're trying to understand how the Pope is working. And so, for example, on the issue of reform, how the Pope is reforming the Church, we asked Honduran Cardinal Oscar Rodriguez, who is the coordinator of the Council of Cardinals, to explain to our readers what the Pope is trying to do with that body and what he's trying to do with the Church. So it was a bit of finding people who are interesting, but people who also had really authoritative, really behind-the-scenes knowledge to bring about what the Pope is doing.
One thing that we sent out from the beginning was to have a variety of voices, including we were trying for 50% women. Didn't quite make it, but came close. We wanted essays that would be personal, not too academic. We wanted some of them to be lighter. So, for example, we have one of the essays is about the Pope's use of the word sourpuss to describe the face of someone who does not have gospel joy. And it's a lighthearted look at that word. The essay on grandparents is also somewhat, it's not thick theology. It's not heavy going. So I think people will find a good variety of sort of the very profound and the very somewhat lighthearted. And most of the essays are really short. And so I think that people could get through them quite easily.
One thing that surprised me that I don't think we attempted to do was how prayerful it became. For example, we asked the Brownsville, Texas Bishop Daniel Flores to write on how the Pope uses prayer. And he very carefully looked at how the Pope prays, especially how he prayed in Mexico when he was with Our Lady of Guadalupe and what that was like. But the essay that really, in that vein, really struck me is the essay by a Jesuit in Africa, the head of the Jesuit conference in Africa, Father Arobator. And he wrote on how the Pope refers to Jesus. And he looked at it, how the Pope refers to Jesus as a person. And the end of the essay really becomes a litany of prayer, using the different phrases, the different ways the Pope has referred to Jesus to take on the form of a prayer. It's really beautiful, and I don't think it's something we expected or thought our book might do. Well, we are very blessed that Patriarch Bartholomew agreed to write the foreword for our volume. We had reached out to an Orthodox priest who is an advisor to the Patriarch on environmental issues to see if the Patriarch might be willing to write in the book about how Pope Francis talks about creation and talks about the environment. And immediately the priest suggested to us, well, what do you think about the Patriarch writing the foreword? And we were very lucky, very blessed that the Patriarch decided that he would be willing to do that. And he wrote a very beautiful introduction to the volume, explaining how he, as the Orthodox Patriarch, looks at his brother Francis, and how this book helps him even understand his brother better. And he even said it's more than words, this book. It's like an offering to God, and we're very grateful and very humbled to have that contribution.
The other ecumenical sort of name in the book is the Anglican Archbishop of Canterbury, Archbishop Justin Welby. And he writes about the word sheep and about the pastoral concern that the Pope and the Archbishop share, but also about a symbol that they share that I won't do a spoiler kind of thing. You'll have to read that. But the ecumenical cooperation in the contributions in the book, I think, are really powerful and a sign that this Pope's ministry of reaching out is working. I think it's clear from watching Pope Francis every day and then from reflecting on his ministry by reading the essays in the book that this Pope is trying to get all of us as Catholics back to the basics of our faith, which are a personal relationship with Jesus and care for the poor. And I think he sometimes kind of shocks people or, startles people into waking up a little bit and looking at their lives, at their relationship with Jesus through the church, and at their relationship with the poor. I think that puts into perspective the other things like the Roman Curia and the church structure and all of our programs and all of our ministries, that all of these things are good when they serve the two basics of a personal relationship with Jesus and love and care for the poor.
To answer your question about what this surprising Pope is up to, I think what surprised me about the book was Pope Francis is really known for sound bites almost, the who am I to judge moment, or the go out, I want a church that goes out and gets bruised. And our book, in these 54 different essays, kind of goes beyond that into the deep theological, philosophical layers of the Pope and what he's trying to get at. 54 different layers of different authors examining the deeper roots of the Pope's theology, the Pope's vision for the church. And to me, what was surprising is how deep and how wide those roots go, and the different ways we get to see that in different essays by some very eminent authors.
As one of the co-editors of a Pope Francis Lexicon, I think I've read every essay at least 4 times, maybe 5 times. And the thing that surprises me every time is how meditative these essays are, how thought provoking, just like the ministry of Pope Francis has been thought provoking. Not everyone will agree with everything in the book. Not everyone in the book agrees with everything the Pope says and does. But I think that it has turned out to be a real source of insight into many of the things that the Pope has done and said.